everyone, welcome back to my channel Sweet Art Crafts. In this Watch Me Resin, I'll be showing you guys how I made these Halloween charms by adding bone sprinkles into the resin. Before getting into the rest of this video, I just wanted to reiterate the epoxy resin safety. Make sure that you are wearing nitrile gloves and are working in a well-ventilated room with the windows open. A garage or a porch is preferable, and also make sure that you are wearing a respiratory mask that uses vapor filters. In this clip here, you guys can see I'm putting on my nitrile gloves, and usually nitrile gloves come in this blue color, and the respiratory mask that I use is by the 3M brand, and it has vapor filters. Here are the majority of the supplies that I used in this video to make the charms. If I forgot anything, don't be afraid to ask me in the comment section, and I'll make sure to link everything in my description box below. These beads are available on my website sweetartcrafts.com, and they are part of my Halloween collection. The silicone molds that I'll be using in my video are the ones that I make and sell on my website sweetartcrafts.com. The first layer of resin I will be adding the bone sprinkles into, so I'll be using the ClearCast 7050 resin because this resin is pretty clear, and in general I really like using this resin. So I poured the resin and the hardener and I mixed them together. For this resin, it is 2-to-1 ratio. So you do 2 parts of resin and 1 part of the hardener, and I do this by volume. So I went ahead and mixed that together for 3 to 5 minutes before transferring it into another cup and mixing it again for another 2 minutes. I do this because I want to make sure the resin is completely mixed together, because before, when I never did this, I noticed that there was more times where I would have pieces that would come out soft and squishy because the resin wasn't mixed properly. Now I'm going to start adding the resin into the rim section of this mold. You want to make sure you don't fill the mold all the way because we are adding the sprinkles into it, so it does push the resin up. So you just want to be careful with the amount of resin that you are putting in this first layer. Using tweezers, I'll be adding the bone sprinkles into that first layer, and you can see that the bones kind of push away from each other, so I'm going to use some toothpicks to push them back together so that they're more closer together, so I can fit as many sprinkles as I can. For the coffin charm, I noticed that I could add a little bit more resin for that first layer, so I went ahead and added it. And I went ahead and added the sprinkles into the heart mold as well. Sometimes I'll notice some little resin pieces that get stuck to the cavity of the mold after pouring my first layer, so I use packing tape just to pick it up before I pour my second layer. I will be using the ClearCast 7050 again for the back layer of these charms, just because I really like how it holds colors. But an alternative resin that you guys can also use is Art and Glow, because I really do like how that resin holds color as well. I separated the resin into 6 different cups, and I did leave a little bit of clear resin in the cup that I'm pouring from. For the back layer of the charms, I will be doing a dirty pour method. I do have a full tutorial on my channel on how I do this, so click the iCard above. Basically, I'm just pouring colors into each other, and then I'm going to pour that straight into the mold. After waiting 24 hours, I demolded the pieces and this is how they turned out. For the coffin shaker, I decided to add a cobweb where it would stay in place, so I used UV resin and I attached it to the area that I wanted it, and then I used the UV light to cure it in place. I noticed when filming this video that I didn't have that many Halloween themed shaker fillings, so I decided to make my own using a Posca paint marker and drawing the designs that I wanted onto transparency film. I know that Amy May did a similar method in one of her earlier videos. I know that I am not the best drawer out there, so guys, please don't come for me because I really tried. After the little drawings dried, I went ahead and used Mod Podge to seal them. You guys can see I spilled the Mod Podge all over the transparency film, so I just put it back into the container and then I went and used the rest of it to put all over the transparency film, and I let it dry for about 30 minutes before I went into the next part of the video. Off camera, I cut the drawings into little pieces, and now I'm going to take UV resin and I'm going to apply a dome over them so that when they are in the baby oil, they can move a little bit better and that they can look shinier, because you can see the lines from the Mod Podge and I didn't really want that to show when they're in the pieces, so that's why I added the UV resin. Now I'm going to start adding in the shaker fillings that I want in these pieces. This does take me a while, so it's always changing. I think it took me a day before I finally finalized what I wanted in each of these pieces. So that's why I don't film the whole process of me doing it, just because it's always changing. And then in the heart lollipop one, I am going to add a spider glitter and I'm going to glue it in just like I did with the cobweb one that I did earlier. And these are the finalized pieces of the shaker fillings. Everything that I used is at the beginning of this video and will also be linked in the description box. Now I'm going to take a Sharpie pen and the transparency film and I'm going to start tracing around the pieces. I always use rubbing alcohol on a paper towel just to wipe away any excess marker that is showing. Now I'm going to take the Sharpie pen again and put dots where I want to punch the hole where I'm going to fill the baby oil through. I'm using a 1/16 inch hole puncher to punch the hole. I will be doing an updated how I make my shaker charms video because I really love this method, and like I mentioned in my last video, I did get inspired by Amy Made here on YouTube on this new method. This is an optional step, but I decided to sand around the area where I'll be placing the transparency film. I noticed that the UV resin attached a bit better in this area when I sanded it, and I did wash the pieces after I sanded them. I also did wipe them down with rubbing alcohol just to really make sure that they are thoroughly clean. To attach the transparency film to the charm, I used UV resin and a toothpick. I applied a little bit of the UV resin to a small section of the charm, and then I used some tweezers to push it down. The excess UV resin that comes out, I'd recommend using a Q-tip and rubbing alcohol to rub off that excess. I didn't do it with this section because I forgot, but with the rest of the charm I do that method. Wiping down the excess UV resin that comes out of the sides allows the dome to be fully secured and no leakage issues occur. Amy Made has a great video explaining in depth of why this happens, so I can't really explain it that well, so I'll make sure to link that video that she did down below for you guys to get a better understanding as to why it's a very good idea to wipe off the excess UV resin that spews out. I repeated the same process with the other two charms, and now I'm going to start adding in baby oil. So I just put the precision tip bottle through the hole and I started squeezing the bottle for the baby oil to come out, and I filled it all the way up. You want to make sure that you leave a little air bubble in there so that the pieces are able to move a bit better. And now you guys can see I have the air bubble, and I'm going to start wiping down the piece once I have the amount of baby oil I want in it, and I'm going to be wiping it down with rubbing alcohol. I gently laid down the piece on the table, and now I'm going to take a Q-tip and rub it again with rubbing alcohol just in case if any more baby oil decided to spill out. And then I'm going to turn on my UV light because I like to have it on first before I put the UV resin on the hole, so that when I put it on there I can quickly cure it, because if I don't, the UV resin will drop into the piece and it can get your shaker filling stuck. So you can see I dropped the UV resin with using a toothpick onto the hole, and then I got my UV light and put it right over it and started to get it to cure. I'm taking rubbing alcohol and pouring it onto a paper towel, and I'm just going to wipe down the piece because I really want to make sure that all of the baby oil is off of the piece before I get into doming them. I'm using a different resin for doming today, and it's the Faux Rizzle Nouveau resin. If I'm not mistaken, that's how you say it. It is a 1-to-1 ratio resin, but they recommend you pour the hardener first and then the resin before you get into mixing, which is what I did. The only issue that I have with this resin is it does produce a lot of bubbles, so I'd recommend mixing really slow, because I notice when I mix slower the bubbles don't really form as much because this resin is very thick. So thicker viscosity resin, they tend to create more bubbles, so you do have to mix slower. So other than that, I didn't have any issues with it, but this is a really good doming resin, the best that I've tried so far, so I really do like that. But if you guys want me to do a full review of this resin, leave a comment down below and I'll make one. Since this is a higher viscosity resin, I only waited about 5 minutes before I got into doming the pieces, and I noticed that there was no overspill or anything like that. I didn't even use any liquid latex to protect the bottom. I just went right in, and I didn't have any issues with the overspill because it didn't go over the edges or anything like that because of how thick it is, which is why I really do like this resin for doming. Sometimes in my videos I tend to forget to show you guys that I do cover my pieces when I dome them to make sure that no dust particles get on them, because that causes dips in your charms and it will make them not look that great. It was actually 48 hours later. I just didn't want to show you guys me doming a second layer, but for this resin I only think you really need one layer because it cures very hard, and I noticed unlike the other resin that I used before that it's not squishy, so I think it's a very secured resin for doming. For these charms, I'm going to be using bales instead of eye screws. I get this question asked a lot for some of the pieces that I've done before, but yes, they're called bales, and I'll make sure to leave some linked in the description box. But basically, I'm going to sand the backs of the pieces first and then wash them. Because I wanted to make sure that the pieces were fully cleaned, I did wipe that area down with rubbing alcohol before I got into attaching the bale. I'll be applying the UV resin to the area that I sanded, and then I'm going to attach the bale and try to make sure it's centered as much as I can, and then I'll take the UV light and put it over it to cure. I recommend doming the backs of your pieces when you're using bales because you want to make sure that they are fully attached and secured to the charms. I will be using the same doming resin that I used earlier and using the same method that I use when doming the front of the pieces. To finish off the pieces, I'll be adding their keychain attachments. And here are the charms completely finished. I really hope you guys enjoyed this watch me resin style video, and I hope you learned some new things. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, like, and share this video with your friends and family, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye now.